Hello everyone, welcome to this session on parameter passing modes. This session is part of Module 3 of Programming Paradigms, course code CS403. This session is meant for SM and CSE students of APJ Abdul Kalam Technological University. I am Dr. Renu Mary Daniel, Assistant Professor, Department of CSE, Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology. So in this particular session, we will be discussing about the different parameter passing modes. Once again, welcome to this session. Now we'll move on to the topic parameter passing. Most subroutines are parameterized. They take arguments that control certain aspects of their behavior or specify the data on which they are to operate. Parameter names that appear in the declaration of a subroutine or definition are called the formal parameters. Expressions that are passed to a subroutine in a particular call are the actual parameters or the arguments. So here you can see an example. We have a function definition here in max, int a, int b, then the body of the function. So whatever we have over here, the parameters we have in this function header are the formal parameters. And over here we have a function called max y plus 5 comma 10. So this 5 plus 5 is and as well as 10 are the actual parameters. These will be mapped to the formal parameters. Let's now discuss about the different parameter passing modes. The most common parameter passing modes are call by value, call by reference, call by closures or call by names. Many languages support different parameter passing modes, while others have a specific parameter passing mode by default. I'm sure you're familiar with the terminologies of call by value and call by reference because in C you might have learned about it. So with value parameters, so that is when you're following call by value, each actual parameter is assigned into the corresponding formal parameter when a subroutine is called. From then on, the two are independent. That is, the changes made to the formal parameters will not be reflected in the actual parameters in the case of call by value. Whereas, with call by reference parameters, each formal parameter introduces within the body of the subroutine a new name or an alias for the corresponding actual parameter. The two names are aliases for the same object and the changes made through one will be visible through the other. Both of them will point to the same address. The changes made to one will be reflected in the other. In most languages, the actual parameter that is to be passed by reference must be an L value, a left-hand side value. It cannot be the result of an arithmetic operation or any other value without an address. So remember, in C, by default, we pass all parameters by call by value. And the only difference comes in the case of arrays. When you pass an array name by default, because of the relationship between array names and pointers, arrays will be passed by reference. Let's now see some examples for call by value and call by reference using this example pseudocode. So this is just a pseudocode. I'm not associating it with any specific programming language. Here you have a global variable x. Then we have a procedure foo. This is the definition function body, the definition of the procedure foo. And the procedure foo, it takes a single parameter integer argument as input, which is y. The formal parameter name is y. And within the body of foo, we are changing the value of y to 3. And notice that we are printing x, not y. Then the function body ends and we are back in the main function, and here you can see that the global variable x's value is assigned to, and then we are making the function call to foo. And finally we are printing the value of x. So suppose in this case we are following call by value. So x value, the value of the global variable is assigned to, the value is assigned as 2 to x. Then we are passing foo of 2. So this is now we are following call by value. So the value of x will be copied to this formal parameter y, and y value also becomes 2. Within the body of the function, notice that y is now a local variable. It's private to the function foo, and we are now assigning the value 3 to y. And if you print the value of x, we'll still get the value of the global variable x, which is 2, because y and x are two independent variables. We are following call by value. Now the function returns and we are back in the main function, and once we return, we'll be executing the statement after the function call to foo, which is print x. So x value will be printed, x value is 2, and so in the case of call by value, the program prints 2 twice. So this will be the output in the case of call by value, 2, 2. Now suppose the function follows call by reference, okay. So now the value of x will be passed, which is 2, and y will be an alias for x. Both of them will be pointing to the same address if we follow call by reference. So whatever changes made to y will also be reflected in the address of x. So when we do the operation y equal to 3, x value will also be modified. So if we print x, now it prints the value 3. Then the function returns and we are back in the main function, and we'll be executing the statement print x that immediately follows foo of x. And we know that the value of x has been modified, and now the modified value 3 will get printed. So in the case of call by reference, the output will be 3, 3. You can see the output here. So if y is passed to foo by value, then the assignment inside foo has no visible effect. Y is private to the subroutine and the program prints 2 twice. If y is passed to foo by reference, then the assignment inside foo changes x. Y is just a local name for x and the program prints 3 twice as shown here. In Pascal, parameters are passed by value by default. They are passed by reference if preceded by the keyword var in their subroutine, headers, formal parameter list. Parameters in C are always passed by value, though the effect for arrays is unusual. Remember, we discussed about lack of orthogonality in C in module 2. So because of the interoperability of arrays and pointers in C, that is why it happens. So what is passed by value is a pointer in the case of array name. Changes to array elements accessed through this pointer will be visible to caller. So apart from the array names, everything by default is passed by value in C. So if you want to pass anything by reference, you have to follow this. That is, you have to pass the address of the variable in the function call. So here we have a function called swap. Inside the function swap, we take two integer pointers a and b, within the function we are actually swapping the values within a and b, and we are passing the addresses of two variables v1 and v2. So whatever changes we make to this variables a and b will be reflected in the addresses of v1 and v2. So here in this case, this is an example of call by reference in C. Now we will discuss about another parameter passing mode called call by value result. This mode was first introduced in Algol W. Like call by value result initially copies the actual parameter into the formal parameter at the beginning of the subroutine execution. Unlike call by value, it also copies the formal parameter back into the actual parameter when the subroutine returns. Value result would copy x into y at the beginning of foo and y into x at the end of foo in this following program. So we have seen this code in the previous slide. We have a global variable x, which is an integer variable, and then we have the function definition for procedure foo, and then we have this statement x equal to 2, wherein in the main program we are assigning the value 2 to the global variable x, and we make a call to foo passing x as the actual parameter. So within the body of foo, in call by value result, the value of the actual parameter will be copied to the formal parameter at the beginning of the subroutine execution as in call by value. So y value will be now 2. Then within the body of foo, the y value is reassigned to 3. Then we have a statement called print x. Now, recall that in call by value result, the value of the formal parameter will be copied back to the actual parameter only when the function returns. Until then, nothing of that sort will happen. Therefore, value of x will still be 2, and this statement print x will be printing the value 2. Now the function returns at that point of time the value of the formal parameter, the most recent value of the formal parameter will be copied back to the actual parameter x. So when you execute the statement print x after the function call, after the function returns, this statement will now be printing the most recent value of x, that is 3. So the output will be 2, 3. Now we'll discuss about parameter passing modes in Fortran. Fortran passes all parameters by reference. By default, Fortran passes everything by all parameters by reference. But it does not require that every actual parameter must be an L value. So if a built-up expression appears in an argument list, the compiler creates a temporary variable to hold the result of that expression and passes this variable by reference to the formal parameter. A Fortran subroutine that needs to modify the values of the formal parameter without modifying its actual parameters must copy the values into local variables and modify those instead. Now we'll see about another parameter passing mode called call by sharing. In call by sharing, the caller of the function shares objects with the function being called. The call function can mutate those objects as long as the objects themselves are mutable. A mutable object is an object whose state can be modified after it is created. In JavaScript, only objects and arrays are mutable, not primitive types. Because the objects are shared, any changes will be reflected in the calling function. This convention is applied to all objects being passed. In particular, it is not called by value because mutations of arguments performed by the call routine will be visible to the caller. And it is not called by reference because access is not given to the variables of the caller but merely to certain objects. Now it might look quite confusing, but we'll see few examples and hopefully it will become clear to you. In the case of call by sharing, when we pass a variable to a function, a new variable is created in the function scope which refers to the passed value. In the case of JavaScript, objects are mutable while strings and numbers are immutable. So changes to the object's properties, we call the changes to the object's properties as mutations. These mutations in the function scope are visible to the caller's scope because of the shared reference. But reassigning the variable inside the function, called function, makes it refer to a different value in the function scope. Now, such kind of reassignments will not be reflected back in the caller scope. Now the caller scope and function scope refers to different values, so the outside variable still remains unaffected. In call by sharing, we will not be passing the access to the caller's variable to the callee. Instead, we will be sharing some object references. So the objects are shared, and if the objects are mutable, then the changes made to the object, so the properties of the objects, that is the mutations, or using methods, if you make some changes to the objects, then those changes will be reflected back in the caller. Otherwise, if you are passing some primitive types, as in the case of JavaScript, primitive types in strings are not mutable, so changes made to strings or primitive types will not be reflected back in the caller. So actually the variables will be different in the caller scope and callee scope. However, if it is objects, the mutations performed to the object in the callee will be reflected back in the caller. Let's see some examples from JavaScript. So remember, in JavaScript, arrays and objects are mutable. However, primitive types and strings are not mutable. So here we have a function called fn. You can see that fn takes two arguments a and b. And then in the main function, so we have the function definition over here, we'll discuss it later. Here we have an object declaration. So the object obj1 is assigned some value. So here it has a property. So properties of JavaScript objects are the values assigned to them. So initial value is value. Then we have an array which contains values 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Then we are making a function called to fn. We are passing object obj1 and array as the actual parameters. Then within the body of the function, we are doing a.prop. So obj1 will be mapped to a. So here we are doing obj1.prop is equal to changed value. So here we are mutating the objects. Since the objects are mutable in JavaScript, this will be changed. The property will be changed to changed value. Its initial value was value. It is changed now to changed value. Then we are changing the array's value, that is b of 3. Array b of 3's value to 10. So notice, remember that ARR had 4 in the third index. That is changed to 10. So arrays are also mutable in JavaScript. So when the function returns and we execute the statement console.log obj1 comma ARR, it will print the contents, the values within obj1 and ARR. So the output will be prop changed value. Notice that the changes made within the callee has been reflected in the caller and is changed to change value. Also within the array, the third index has been modified to 10. So this is call by sharing in JavaScript. Let's see another example. So here we have this program is similar to the previous one. Here again we have a function called fn which takes 3 input arguments, input parameters, and then in the main program we have an object obj1 which has some value. Then we have a string which has the initial value string, and then we have a number which has an initial value 2. Then we are calling the function fn and we are passing obj1, str and num as the actual parameters. Now within the body of the function, we are reassigning the value of obj1. Notice the difference. Here we are using the property of the object and we are mutating it. However, here we are reassigning the value of the object, and this type of reassignments will not work. This will not get reflected back in the caller. Then we know that B and C. B is a string, C is a number, it is a primitive data type. These two are not mutable, so whatever changes you make to them will not be reflected back in the caller scope. So B we are reassigning it to another string. So C we are assigning it to 10. So this will be a different variable in the callee scope. It will not be changed, reflected back in the caller. So after you return from the function, when you execute the statement console.log obj1 str and num, it will print only the initial values. Notice that the initial value of obj1 was prop value, that will get printed. The initial value of str was string, that will get printed, and the initial value of num was 2, that will get printed. Nothing will be changed because in the case of the object we are doing a reassignment which will not work, and strings and numbers are immutable in JavaScript. So changes made to them will also will not be reflected back in the caller. So this is call by sharing. Here we will see another example for call by sharing in Python. In call by sharing, when we pass an argument from the caller to the callee, we are sharing the object referred to by the variable and not access to the actual variable of the caller. So we will not be passing access to the actual variable, but it will be we will be sharing the actual object referred to by the variable. So if the object is mutable, we can make changes to the object within the callee using methods, and that will be reflected back in the caller. However, if the object is not mutable, then the changes will not be reflected back, and also any sort of reassignments will not be reflected back in the caller. So let's see some examples for these. Here in this slide, here in this code snippet, you can see that there's a function f which takes a list as input. So in Python, lists are mutable, and within the body of the function we are just doing a simple operation. We are appending the value 1 to this list. Then in the main program we have an empty list, and we are passing this empty list to the function f. So this is a function call, and since lists are mutable and since we are using the method append to make changes to the object, to this list object, it will be reflected back in the main program, and this print statement will print the modified value, that is the list containing value 1 as the output. Now let's see another variant of this function. Here we have the same function f which takes a list as input, and within the body of the function, instead of using the method append, we are trying to reassign the value of the list to 1. And in the main program again we have an empty list m. We are passing it as an argument to f, and then we are printing the value of m once this function returns. Since we are reassigning the value of this list, And we know that in call by sharing we'll be passing only the actual object referred to by the variable and not access to the variable itself. So this kind of reassignments will not work and it will not be reflected back in the main program, and this printf statement will print the original empty list as output. So in Python, lists are mutable. So the program on the left hand side prints 1 because append method modifies the object on which it is called. Assignments within a function are not noticeable to the caller because in these languages, passing the variable only means passing access to the actual object referred to by the variable, not access to the caller's variable, original variable. The second program on the right hand side outputs the empty set because the statement list is equal to 1 reassigns a new list to the variable rather than to the location it references. Now let's see how to choose between the two most common parameter passing modes, that is call by value and call by reference. In a language that provides support for both call by value and call by reference parameter passing modes, there are two principal reasons why the programmer might choose one over the other. First, if the call routine is supposed to change the value of the actual parameter, then the programmer must pass the parameter by reference. Conversely, to ensure that the call routine cannot modify the argument, the programmer can pass the parameter by value. Second, the implementation of value parameters require copying the value of the actual parameter to formal parameter, and this is a potentially time-consuming operation when the arguments are large. Reference parameters can be implemented simply by passing an address, but this obviously requires an extra level of indirection. If the parameter is used often enough, the cost of the extra level of indirection in pass by address may outweigh the cost of copying the argument. So there are something called read-only parameters. To combine the efficiency of reference parameters and the safety of value parameters, Modular 3 provides a read-only parameter passing mode. Any formal parameter whose declaration is preceded by read-only cannot be changed by the call routine. The compiler prevents the programmer from using the formal parameter on the left hand side of any assignment statement, reading it from a file, or passing it by reference to any other subroutine. Small read-only parameters is generally implemented by passing a value. Larger read-only parameters are implemented by passing an address. And this might sound a little bit confusing. We'll see examples of each case, that is passing read-only parameters by value and passing it by reference in the next slide. The equivalent of read-only parameters is also available in C, which allows any variable or parameter declaration to be preceded by the keyword const. So such formal parameters cannot be modified in the calling. So in the previous slide, we have seen that read-only parameters can be passed by value if it is small, and if it is large, like if it is a record, we can even pass it by reference. So in this first example, we'll see how to pass read-only parameters by value. So here in the main function, this is a C program. In the main function, we have two integer variables C and D. C is initialized with the value 8, D is initialized with the value 5, and we are calling the function sum, and we are passing C and D as the actual parameters. Now within the function definition for sum, you can see that the formal parameters A and B are both preceded by the keyword const. That means that both A and B are read-only parameters, and we will not be able to modify their value or use it as an L value in an expression. So here I have a simple statement printf %d a plus b, and this will work perfectly well, and I'll get the value 8 plus 5, which is 13 as the output. You can see that I have commented a line over here, a equal to 78. If I uncomment that line, then here I am using a as an L value. So that means I am trying to modify the value of a. So that is not possible in the case of read-only parameters, and the compiler will immediately throw an error, assignment of read-only parameter a. Let's now see an example wherein the read-only parameters are passed by reference. So here I am using type def to create a new type called stud, which is actually a type of type struct. Okay, so this is a user-defined type called stud, and the stud has two member variables int a and character array b. Then we have a function definition over here. It's a function called log, log, and we'll see the body of log later. Within the main function, I'm creating a record of type stud, S-T-U-D, and the values within this record are 50 and hello. That means r dot a is 50 and r dot b is hello. Then I am passing the address of r2 function log, and this is the actual parameter, and corresponding to this actual parameter I should be having a pointer to receive the address of this record r. So here you can see indeed I have a pointer to stud in the inside function log, but it is preceded by the keyword const. So it is actually passed by reference, but this one is preceded by the keyword const, which means that it is read only. Now it's possible to access all the elements within the within this structure or within this record R using the arrow operator. So we can do R arrow operator A to access the value within R dot A. So that means it will print value 80, and I can also access R dot B value using the arrow operator, because this stud star R is a pointer. So this will give me the value hello. However, if I do this line, R of A is equal to 80, I am essentially trying to modify the value within A. Now this is not possible because here R is a read-only parameter. Therefore, I'll immediately get an error, assignment of member A in read-only object. So these are examples for passing read-only parameters by value and by reference. Now we'll see about the various parameter passing modes in ADA. The ADA has some interesting parameter passing modes such as in, out and in-out. In in mode, parameters can be read by the callee, but the callee cannot modify the value. In out mode, it passes information from callee to the caller. In ADA 83, they can be written by the callee but not read. In ADA 95, they can be both read and written, but they begin their life uninitialized. In in-out mode, it passes information in both directions. They can be both read and written by the callee. Changes to out or in-out parameters always change the actual parameters. Next point is important. In is called by value. So in parameter mode in ADA corresponds to the call by value mode. The value of the actual parameter is copied into the formal parameter when the subroutine is called. In out is called by value result. So we have already learned about call by value result, and in out is just the same as call by value result. And out is simply called by result. That is, the value of the formal parameter will be copied to the actual parameter when the subroutine returns. So what about in-out? Changes made to an in-out parameter that is passed as an address will affect the actual parameter immediately. However, normally if you pass it by value, changes made to in-out parameter passed by value will not affect the actual parameter until the subroutine returns. So in call by value result, we'll copy the value of the actual parameter to formal parameter in the beginning. And when the function returns, the value of the formal parameter will be copied back to the actual parameter only when the function returns. So that is in-out. Now here in this slide, we'll see an example for the different parameter passing modes in ADA. There are three different parameter passing modes in ADA: in, out and in-out. So in this example code, you can see that there is a procedure called shift which takes 3 integer arguments as input. The formal parameter A is an out parameter, B is in-out parameter, and C is in parameter. So in the case of in parameter, it is same as call by value. That means the value of the actual parameter. When the function shift is called, the value of the actual parameter will be copied to C. But whatever changes that are made to C will never be copied back or seen in the caller. Then we have an in-out parameter B. So in the case of in-out parameter, it is just the same as call by value result. That means initially the value of the actual parameter will be copied to B. Then we'll do some operations with B inside the function, and the resultant value of B, the formal parameter B, will be copied back to the actual parameter when the function returns. In the case of A, it is an out parameter. That means that A's value will not be initialized in the beginning. Then whatever values we assign to A will be copied back when the function returns. So the value of the formal parameter will be copied back to the actual parameter when the function returns. So we'll see an equivalent of this function if we use C. So if we are using C, we can simulate this function as shown over here. So we have the same function named shift. It takes 3 parameters as input, in star A, in star B and C. So here we are using in star A and in star B because A is an out parameter. Its value will be, the changes made to A will be reflected back in the actual parameter. B is an in out parameter. The changes made to B will be reflected back in the original actual parameter. However, C is, you can see it is called by value because C's modifications will not be visible in the caller. Then within this body of the function, you can see that we have created 3 temporary variables, temp A, temp B and temp C. All 3 are integers. Temp A is left uninitialized because it corresponds to the temporary value of this out parameter A, which is uninitialized in the beginning. Then corresponding to B, we have temp B. So in temp B will store the initial value within the address of B. The value within the address of B will be copied to this temporary variable, and in temp C will copy the value of value within this C, within the formal parameter C. Then we'll perform all the operations on the temporary variables. Okay, so while the operations are performed, the actual values in A, B, C will be left as it is. Only when the function returns, we'll do some modifications on the actual values. So temp A, now the statements within shift are A equal to B. So we are doing temp A equal to temp B. That means the value in B will be assigned to A. So A is an out parameter. So this can be done. Next is temp B equal to temp C. B is an in-out parameter and temp B corresponds to the temporary value representing B. So we are copying the value of C to B. Now the function is about to return, and in the case of out parameter A, we have to copy the value of temporary variable the most recent value of the temporary variable back to the location referred to by A. So the value in temp A is now the value in temp B, that value will be copied to the address pointed to by A, and in the case of in-out parameter B, the latest value of temp B will be copied back to the address referred to by B. So this is copy result. This last statement is it corresponds to copy result operation. Copy result values out before return. So this is the corresponding operations for this particular ADA procedure, which illustrates what happens in the case of out, in-out and in parameter passing modes. I'm sure you have already learned about references. There are certain subtle differences between references and pointers. So we'll see about references in C++. In C, one can always arrange to modify an object by passing its address. But then the formal parameter is a pointer and must be explicitly dereferenced whenever it is used. And we have seen lots of issues if we do not dereference it and if we do not deallocate the space, like dangling references and memory leak. So we have to do it explicitly. The program has to do it explicitly, reclamation of all this memory allocated from the heap. C++ addresses this problem by introducing an explicit notion of a reference. A reference variable is an alias, that is another name for an already existing variable. Once the reference is initialized with a variable, either the variable name or the reference name may be used to refer to the variable. Reference parameters are specified by preceding their name with an ampersand in the header of the function. Now here in this slide, I'll show an example from C++ which will help you to easily distinguish between pointers and references. So we have the main function. This is an example C++ program. We have the main function here, and within the main function I have two integer variables I and h. I is initialized with the value 10, h is initialized with the value 90. And then I am initializing a reference called j. You can see that the reference variables will be preceded by an ampersand symbol. So j is a reference variable and j will be it will be an alias for I. It will be an alternative name for I. That means that both j and I will now point to the same memory location. So you have to keep this in mind. both j and I will now point to the same memory location, which is the address of I, and therefore both of them will have the same value now 10, and changes made to either j or I will be reflected in both of them. Okay, so if you do cout j now, j will also contain the value 10. So I will show you the output. So now you can see that corresponding to the first cout statement, you have the value of j is 10, which is the value within I itself. And you can see the address of j and address of I. Ampersand j and ampersand of I will both give you the same address, 0x7ffc6048E2B0. That is the same address in j and I. So both of them points to the same memory location, and j is just an alternative name for I. Now you can see that I am doing an operation j equal to h. Now once the reference is created, the reference, if you have initialized it to point to a particular variable, you can never reassign it to another variable. The reference cannot be pointing to another variable. We can reassign pointers to other addresses, but references cannot be reassigned to other addresses. So if you do an operation like j equal to h, what happens here is the value within h, which is 90, will be copied to the address pointed to by j. So j is actually another name for I. So the location where j and I points to, at that location, the value of h will be stored. That means if you do cout j now, it will print 90. And if you do cout I now, it will also print 90. And just for clarifying our doubt regarding whether j's memory location has changed, I am printing the value of j and h. So we know that the address of I is 0x7ffc6048E2B0. Even after doing the operation j equal to h, we can see that cout ampersand j still prints the same address 2B0, while the address of h is 2B4, which is a different address. So hope you have understood the difference between pointers and references. So reference is just an alias for an already existing variable. Now we'll see how to swap two variables using references. I'm sure you would be knowing this program. So we have in the main function, we have two integer variables a and b. A is having initial value 45, b has 35, and before swap we are printing the values of a and b. This is the output, a equal to 45, b equal to 35. Now we are calling swap of a comma b, and the function swap, it has two references x and y for the actual parameters a and b. So x is an alias for a now, y is an alias for b. So whatever changes you make to x and y will be reflected in a and b. It happens in the same location as a and b. So after the function returns, if you print the value of a and b, you can see that it has been swapped. Here in the slide, we'll see a very important topic called closures. A closure is a record storing a function together with an environment. The environment is a mapping associated with each free variable of the function. That is, variables that are used locally but defined in an enclosing scope. So what does that mean? Where does that happen? Remember about lexical or static scoping and nested subroutines. So in the case of nested subroutines, all the innermost functions can access variables that are defined in the enclosing scope. Also, if you have static scoping, then in any function we can access global variables. So that is called as the environment. So the environment is a mapping associating each free variable of the function with the value or reference to which the name was bound when the closure was created. JavaScript uses lexical or static scoping, so any global variable is automatically accessible within any function in the program, even though it is not in the local scope of the function. In the case of nested subroutines, even that is supported in JavaScript, the innermost functions can access the variables in the parent function scope, and the values of the variables or the environment in the outer scope will be preserved in the inner scope. So basically, closures are just functions with preserved data. Let's see a very simple example from JavaScript for closures. Here we have in the global scope a variable p, which is initialized the value 5. Then we have a function definition here. The function name is add. It doesn't take any parameters. Then within the function, we have a local variable I, which is initialized the value 2. Then the function returns p plus I. Notice that p is not a local variable. However, the value of p is preserved within the function, and if you do console.log of add, this function gets called, and the most recent value of p when this function is being called, that value of p will be taken up to evaluate this expression, and in this case it returns 5 plus 2, which is 7. So this is a simple example for a closure. These are functions with preserved data. Now we will see another more complicated example wherein we have a nested subroutine. So here you can see that we have an outer enclosing procedure called add1, which takes a single parameter called outer as input. Within add1 we have an innermost subroutine called add2, which takes a parameter inner, and add2 returns outer plus inner. So whenever we are in add2, this value of the outer parameter is always accessible within add2, and that value will be preserved in add2. And you can see that add1 returns add2. Okay, add1 returns add2. And now in the main program, we are creating variable add3 equal to add1 of 3. So notice that add1 returns add2. So this add3 will be now just a reference to add2. So we are passing the value 3 to add1. That means this outer parameter will get the value 3. Okay, outer parameter will get the value 3. However, this will now return nothing because we still do not have any value for the inner parameter. So this function add1 returns add2. Now if you do add3 of 5 now, that value 5 will be passed to add2. Okay, that value 5 will be passed to add2. Now both of them have values. Notice that even in the second statement, when we do add3 of 5, this inner parameter gets the value 5, but add2 still preserves the value of the outer parameter, and it correctly returns 3 plus 5, which is 8. So here in this case, add2 it saves the environment, preserves the environment of add1. So this is an example for a closure. So the output of the program will be 8. Now it's also possible to pass closures as parameters to other functions. What is the major advantage of this? The most obvious reason is that the parameters to a function might be a subroutine itself. So in that case, unlike a plain function, a closure allows the called function or the callee to access the captured variables through the closure's copies of their values or references, even when the function is invoked outside their scope. Now we'll see some examples wherein closures are passed as parameters. So here in this case, you can see that we have an example JavaScript code. We have a variable a which is initialized as done third. It is a string. Then we have a function definition, fn, function called fn, and within the function we are just printing the value of a. This is a simple operation. We are simply printing the value of a. Then we are calling the function setTimeout. The setTimeout takes two arguments as input. One is a function, and another one is the number of milliseconds after which this function has to be executed, or the function has to be called. So this particular setTimeout function takes two arguments. One is the function name itself, and the one is the number of milliseconds after which this function should be called. Then we have two statements to print the string values done first and done second. So when you execute this program, initially this setTimeout function will cause this particular fn to be called after 1000 milliseconds, and by that time done first and done second will be executed. Then only this particular function will be invoked and done third will be printed to the function. So this is the output. Initially done first will be printed, then done second will be printed, and done third will be printed at the end. So here it is not obvious what happens when this function fn is actually a closure. It is passed as a parameter to set timeout, but it's not obvious what is happening, what is so special about it. Okay, so here the most recent value of a is taken, that is done third value is taken, and it is getting printed. Let's see another slight modification to the same program. So here a is equal to done third. We have the same function fn which prints the value of a. Then we have set timeout fn 1000, console.log done first, console.log done second, variable a. See, the a is a global variable. Here I am modifying the value of a again to 10. Variable a equal to 10. So I am assigning a new value 10. and then I'm calling the function again, set timeout fn 1000. So when I executed this, I felt that first done first will be printed, then done second will be printed, then this particular statement will execute and it will print done third. However, when I looked at the output, I got this output, that is done first will be printed, done second will then be printed, and then this a value will be assigned the value 10, and then that latest value of a will be passed to this function fn, and that particular environment is preserved and that value will be taken up, and that will be printed by the first set timeout function as well as by the second set timeout called to the function fn. So both of them will print the value 10. Here in the slide we'll see an example of how to pass closures as parameters. So here we have a procedure called apply to a. Within this procedure it's taking two parameters as input. The first one is a closure. So the formal subroutine's name is f. It takes an integer parameter n as input and it returns an integer value. So this is a closure. Then we have a variable a, which is an array. The lower and upper bounds of the array are both integers, and this array stores integer elements. And then we have the body of the function. You can see within begin and end we have the body of the function. The function called to apply to a appears in line 13. You can see apply to a add k my array, which means that my array is an integer array and add k has to be a closure. Now we'll check in this code for the definition of the function add k. So that we'll find in line 18, that is a function add k m integer. So as in this particular formal subroutine, this function f takes an integer argument as input and it returns an integer value. Similarly here add k takes an integer argument m as input and it returns an integer value. So within the body of the function it performs the operation m plus k. Notice that m is the parameter passed to add k. However, k is not defined in its local scope. Rather it is defined in its enclosing scope. So k is defined in the enclosing scope of add k. However, since add k is a closure, it will be preserving the value of k and it can be accessed within add k. Its environment will be preserved. And in line 12 we are assigning the value 3 to k. So all these things, all these informations will be preserved within the closure add k. Now when you pass add k as a closure to apply to a, there also we will be able to access the entire environment that is available over here for add k. Add k will still be able to access the environment of k and the value of k. So that is what is said here. A closure needs to include both the code address and a reference environment, because in a language with nested subroutines, we need to make sure that the environment available to f. The environment available to f. So f is actually add k. F is the formal parameter name for the closure add k. So the environment available to f at line 5, at this particular line, should be the same. Should be the same as that would have been available to add k if it had been called directly at line 13. In particular, it includes the binding for k. So since it is a closure, it will still store the bindings of k, the environment values within it. The next evaluation strategy is call by name. Call by name is an evaluation strategy by which the arguments to a function are not evaluated before the function is called. Rather, they are substituted directly into the function body and then left to be evaluated whenever they appear in the function. Example is scalar. Scalar follows call by name parameter passing mode. So here is an example code snippet from C. Now we'll see what happens in this code. What will be the output of this code if it follows call by name. Actually it doesn't follow call by name. This is just a pseudocode for us to understand how call by name works. So we have a global variable I, then we have a character array. Let's say the name is A and it can store 3 elements. And the elements stored within this array in indices 0, 1, 2 are 0, 1, 2 respectively. So values are 0, 1, 2 respectively. Then the variable I, global variable I, is initialized with the value 0. Then I am making a function called to f, function f, and I am passing a of I as the actual parameter. And you can see the definition of function f over here. The function f returns an integer value, and then it takes an integer argument as input, and you can see that now since a of I is passed, the value within the index 0, a of 0, which is 0, that value will be copied to j. So j will now contain the value 0. So we have a local variable k within this function f, and k is assigned the value of j. So whenever this argument appears within the function, it will be evaluated. So here if it is evaluated, the value of j is 0 because a of 0 is 0. And the value 0 will be assigned to k. Next, we are now modifying the value of the global variable I to 2. Notice that we had passed a of I as the parameter to f. Now since we have modified the index now, a of 2 will be, a of 2 is this one, 2. A of 2 is 2. So now j value will be re-evaluated and it will become 2. And the next statement k equal to j, next assignment k equal to j will assign the value 2 to k. The assignment will cause the value 2 to get assigned to k. So this is call by name. That is, the arguments to a function are not evaluated before the function is called. Rather, they are substituted directly into the function body and then left to be evaluated whenever they appear in the function. Now we'll see an actual example code snippet from Scala to see how call by name works. So a call by name mechanism passes a code block to a function call. This is the case of Scala, and the code block is compiled, executed and calculated the value. Call by name function in Scala calls the expression and recompute the passed in expression's value every time it gets accessed inside the function. So here you can see that we have a main method. Okay, within the main method we have another function called article counts, and article counts takes an argument I, and this argument I is passed by name. It is called by name because you can see that this particular symbol over here, colon and arrow, this indicates that the parameter I is passed by name. It is passed by name and it is an integer argument. Okay. Now let's see what happens in the main function. This is the function definition for article counts. Now we have a variable called total, an integer variable which is initialized the value 0. Then this particular expression, you can see that this particular code block is the function called to article counts in Scala. Okay, this is the typical function call in Scala. Article counts total plus equal to 1 total. So here we are passing the value of total as the argument to article counts, and it is called by name. So initial value of total is, total value is initially 0. So we are doing total plus equal to 1, which is 0 plus 1, which is 1. And when the initial value passed to article counts is 1, and it will print Tanya did articles on day 1 is 1, total is equal to 1. So you can see the initial output is Tanya did articles on day 1 is 1 and total is equal to 1. Then again it will do print line Tanya did articles plus on day 2 is 1, total is I. So whenever I reappears in this function, this particular code block will be re-evaluated. You can see it recomputes the passed in expression's value every time it gets accessed inside the function. So now again it will get recomputed, and you can see that now total value is 1 plus 1, which is 2. So total value will become 2 now, and this particular statement will print Tanya did articles on day 2 is 1, total is equal to 2. So this particular statement will get printed. Next time when I appears in the next print line statement, this particular code block gets evaluated again, and total value becomes updated to 3. That is 2 plus 1, which is 3. And this third statement prints Tanya did articles on day 3 is 1, total is 3. And next when I appears again in the last print line statement, this code block gets evaluated once again, and total value gets updated to 4, and we get this output Tanya did articles on day 4 is 1 and total is equal to 4.